It finally happened. We got an episode of Marvel Disney Plus television that felt like an MCU movie. Maybe one of the quieter points in the film. I think that this episode was missing a really good action sequence. Sorry, Sharon, you didn't really deliver. You tried, but you didn't really deliver. We'll talk about that. But it's interesting that this felt the most cinematic to date because it's the first one written by a movie screenwriter. Derek Kolstad, who does the John Wick movies and just wrote Nobody. So I find that very interesting. But it was a very fun episode. Very fun. Cap's shadow continues to loom large over this show, which I also think is, very interesting and is intentional. They talk about him some more here, which I thought was great, which we're going to go over. And I also think they continue to have this really interesting theme of a world where there are no clear-cut good guys or bad guys, so you exist in a gray area, but it just got real this episode. It was all fun and games before, like, we can do whatever we want. But now you saw the downside of that, because Zemo, I think, it's a slippery slope to begin with, but Zemo really lubes it up, right? I mean, wow. Welcome to Zemos World. And Daniel Bruhl, he was fantastic. It was some of the sloppiest upgrading of a character I've ever seen in any kind of property. But it was so fun, and Daniel Bruhl sold it so well that we bought it hook, line, and sinker, and with a smile on our faces. Like Zemo. I saw on the internet somebody said that they had created a new pointing cat meme here, and I think that they did. I thought that was hilarious. Now, before we break it down in detail, I think the biggest questions that come out of this episode, let's just talk about them up front because they're so exciting. Well, not just questions, but also elements. So, Madripoor, the MCU, just got a whole lot shadier. I love that. Madripoor is a classic X-Men locale. Kevin Feige talked about recently in an interview. He said he was able to bring a location. He basically said he didn't say Madripoor, but he basically did. And he said that because of the Fox deal, this was one of the things they were able to integrate quite quickly. And they had even a Wolverine reference. It was so great. I mean, a lot of you don't know what Madripoor is. I could tell from the live watch along, but any X-Men fan really knows what Madripoor is. It's a really cool thing. It's funny. One fictional country is erased from the map, Sokovia, which Zemo talks about, but another rises, and that's, of course, Madripoor. Then, of course, what's going on with Sharon? Some of you were like, I think she's the power broker. And I was like, no, that's too obvious. But, I watched it the second time for this breakdown. I have to say, I think you might be right. I think she might be the power broker. So that would be very interesting. And then Wakanda is back on the world stage where it belongs. I'm so happy. That was such a great reveal at the end. The MCU has two badass Florences. Thank you very much. This is Florence Kasumba, who's been around since Civil War, but Denai Guerrero really stepped up and took over the Dora Milaje. She was the face of the Dora Milaje, or Dora Milaje. But I really thought, Florence Kasumba was quite striking in Civil War, and she was in Black Panther, so I'm so happy to see her to get to be center stage here. And when you think about it, the Black Widow program and the Dora Milaje are very similar, right? Although, of course, one you volunteer for, one you're drafted in against your will, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure, Russia would be like, potato. But also, I like seeing the Dora Milaje being developed here because then maybe they could get a Disney Plus show like we'd love to see. And I would love Denai Guerrero and Florence Kasumba to team up and both get a lot of screen time. And then I think the biggest question, even bigger than all that, is that there are 12 vials of super soldier serum that no one's had. There were 20 overall. Carly took all of them but gave away 8, right, that we've seen. So that means there's tentatively 12 in play. Who's going to get one? Some I think will be destroyed. But by the time the series is over, it's going to be bottoms up for a couple of people. You can bet it's going to be John Walker, probably Hoskins. Although I think Hoskins is starting to be like, whoa, I think John Walker might be a psychopath. So he might take a stand and be like, I'm not drinking that. Maybe Sam will have one. He's like, I'm tired of being left out of the group. Sharon, if she's the power broker, I could see maybe her taking it. And then maybe even Zemo. He might be like, no more superheroes, except for me. So I think that's fascinating. Or, I told you that I heard that Florence Pugh was going to show up. Speaking of Florence's, maybe she'll show up at the end and commandeer them for the Thunderbolts. Right? I mean, the Black Widows are boosted, but not to the degree that Captain America and Bucky are. So I could see Florence Pugh's Black Widow wanting that for herself. All right, so let's break it down. So we start off with a commercial. I love it. Just, Wanda, of course, was famous for her commercials. But here we have the Global Repatriation Council. So many of you are quick to point out repatriation. That's citizenship. To the thesaurus or to the dictionary. I think it's funny they have two people. At first, I first was watching this, I just thought this was two people on bikes. But when I went through it, to do this breakdown, I was like, hey, they're like in business suits. That's hilarious. They're like, we're not evil. We're on bikes. We can't be evil. Those are evil bikes. So, and then, of course, just to really stick it to Carly, they're like, look at all these flags, Carly. Do you want to smash them? And she's like, yes. So they're like, oh, look, which country do you belong to? We'll help you. I don't know why if you blipped, you weren't part of a country anymore. Wouldn't you just go right back to being a citizen? I'd be like, what the hell? That seems weird to me. I don't know. I wouldn't put it past the GRC to have created a situation where they were needed. They were like, oh, aren't a lot of you having problems? And who wants to turn down help? So the Global Repatriation Council was born, and they have a big ad budget, and I like the juxtaposition. So they have this really cute ad, and they're like, reset, restore, rebuild. And then you cut to their police, and you're like, what? Why do you have police? And this guy gets out and slides open the door, revealing Captain America. A very different Captain America. We didn't have a lot of commentary on the Black community during this episode, but they stepped up their commentary on America. And I thought that was really interesting. John Walker represents the America that, some people believe is the real America. And I'm sure some of you right now are like, what are you talking about, Grace? It is. And Steve Rogers, I don't know if Steve Rogers, he was dealing with a lot of crap too, but he was on the other side of it. He was like, this is wrong. So that's the America I believe in. The America where we know there's problems, but we're trying real hard to fix them. Thank you. We're working on it. That's Steve Rogers. So he goes into this, into the same place that we saw before, this internet cafe. I'm like, if you're not shady, why do you not have any windows and a closed door? They're like, it's Germany, leave us alone. So Hoskins, so Captain America, this Captain America, of course, doesn't speak any other languages. So Hoskins has to come in and interpret. Hoskins is also someone to talk to, exposition guy, so John Walker doesn't have to monologue. He's like, hey, let me explain it to someone. Hoskins, come over here. So this guy, I like that the guy says, you Americans have become brutes. And I was like, oh, we're working on it. And so he spits on Captain America. Like, holy crap, man. Talk about, just really showing how the world maybe some people feel today. Again, some of you are like, I do feel that way, Grace. He's, hey, if you want to wrap yourself in the flag, it's a strong statement. And so John Walker loses it. Instead of being like, touche, we're working on it. John Walker's like, do you know who I am? And this guy's like, yeah, I know exactly who you are. How do you think I spit on you? It was hilarious. I was like, Walker, you just walked right into that. So Walker comes out here, and Hoskins is like, look, she gives people what they want, and, she's helping people. That inspires a lot of loyalty. And Walker's like, well, you know what? We're just going to have to, I think he had a lot of great lines. Kolstad did a great job writing lines this episode. Walker says, we're just going to have to bet on someone who has a better hand. And then we cut to the better players in this game, and that's Bucky and Sam. And they're in Berlin, Germany. And Sam was very gullible. I'd be like, maybe you would make a great Captain America. He's like very innocent and sweet and so kind-hearted. But, I would never let Bucky go off and do something by himself. Bucky's like, whoa, man, let me handle him. I know what I'm doing. And Sam trusts him. Poor Sam. So we have their little Silence of the Lambs, tete-a-tete, as you guys were saying on the watch-along. I love those bathrooms in the foreground. They're like, look at the indignity. But he's very well organized. He's got his toothbrush there and his toothpaste and all this little stuff. It's very neat in there. All those magazines on the floor, Zemo. What do you think this is? Clean up your room. So they look very similar. And I think this episode really was drawing that there are parallels between them. And that Bucky is kind of like a walking gray zone. And is Zemo a walking gray zone? Interesting question. I don't know. I think you could ask the victims of either person that they killed, and they would say no. But so it just goes to show you how complex the situation is. So Bucky's like, someone's making super soldier serum, and that gets Zemo's attention. And I like Bucky goes from like first being scared of Zemo and then be like, this got old real fast, Zemo. So he takes Sam to this garage, and I like that Sam was like, wait a minute, where are we? That was great. Anthony Mackie's very funny. He has great line delivery. But then Bucky walks us through a hypothetical, which is actually the fastest prison breakout you've ever seen. I wish this show had more time. They've had to rush through some things. This was a very clever way to do it, but I saw the strings. I got why they were doing it this way. So I'm glad, they have this unspoken quasi-villain language between the two of them. Because when Bucky said, what are you reading? I'd be like, oh, that's what I'm reading. And then I would just go back to my stuff. I wouldn't be like, maybe he hid something in there. Like, how did Bucky get in there? He's the Winter Soldier, that's why. So he said, theoretically some people might fight because I set them up to fight. And I'm like, what if he did kill him? And I think Bucky's like, whatever, I used to be the Winter Soldier. So they set up this distraction and they say, oh, this is going to pull guards to the floor and they're going to be off of Zemo's cell and he's going to take that guard into the bathroom and not kill him and take his clothes and escape. And I can't believe Zemo is probably the most famous villain in here, a prisoner, and nobody recognizes him on the thing. I'd be like, there were clear shots where you could see his face here. I'd be like, oh, Zemo? So he runs, he uses us all as a distraction. He pulls the fire alarm himself, and then he escapes. And I loved when he came in here into the garage through that thing there, backlit like that. That was excellent. And it's like this one, he caught up to his own story. It was very clever. It was very well done, even if I couldn't understand why they did it. And Sam's like, "What? I'm a bad guy." And so they reveal that this is a garage of antique classic cars. And on a side note, it's really fun to do this. If you ever get to go to Monaco when stupid pandemic ends, I got to go to Monaco a few years ago, and they have a wonderful, the royal car collection. I guess Zemo's also royalty, right? So I guess royals like to collect classic cars. Maybe that's where they got this idea for Zemo. So anyway, if you have a chance to go to Monaco, it's really interesting. They have all these different vehicles throughout the centuries, and they're so big, some of them, and it's just really interesting to see the evolution of these vehicles. So he's got all these cars, and in one of them, I wondered why the yellow car was so special. I was like, what's the yellow car? I couldn't find a special car that Zemo had back in the day. But this is clearly his old car or a relative's car, but this is where he gets his jacket and the purple mask, which the front up is built. It's not just a basic mask. The front of it is built up so that it's very, so it has good shape to it. Zemo's, it's a padded mask, basically. So Zemo takes it I like the way Daniel Bruhl put it in the bag, like, oh, need this for later. And so he's like, come, I know where we're going to go. And I like them. Sam was like, this whole time you were rich? And I really have to say, the Zemo costume is excellent. The fur is not just white fur around the collar, but it's that same kind of, black spotted fur that Zemo had in the comic book. So it's a very good, real world adaptation of that costume. So I like that Bucky's like he rolls with all this. He probably knew he was rich because Bucky knows a lot of stuff he doesn't tell anyone. And Zemo's like, yeah, of course, I'm Baron Zemo. I'm royalty. And I'm like, well, you didn't seem to be spending all that money on your family because, I think that they would have had a bunker so they wouldn't have died. I mean, it's really ridiculous. It's totally a retcon. It makes absolutely no sense with the way the character has been handled in the past. But again, as I said, we're going to happily go with it because Daniel Bruhl does such a great job. So he has this creepy, weird butler, and in the live watch-along, one of you said he was like evil Bruce Wayne. And he is, even down to an evil Alfred. And so Sam's back in the air, although this made me realize that Sam doesn't have his wings with him, so he's really at a disadvantage. So this guy's name is Oznik. I looked it up. There's no Oznik in the MCU, but this guy, I'm sure he's going to stick around. The give and take. He says, sir, I'll see if there's any food down in the downstairs or wherever in the plane. There's no downstairs in the plane really, like a small plane like this. And Zemo is like, give it the smell test, and if it doesn't pass it, give that food to these guys. And his butler laughs and he's like, it's so good to have you back, sir. And I thought that was hilarious. He's like, you have an evil butler. That's amazing. And I have to say, even Zemo's shirt is pretty awesome. I mean, that is very nicely tailored. It's fantastic. So I don't know how he got Bucky's book, but he's like, oh, is this a list of names of people you have to make up to? And I'm like, that's an excellent guess, Zemo. Have you been watching this show from prison? And he's like, I have. So, Bucky does not take kindly to that. But Sam points out that's Steve's booklet. And I'm like, I guess he was writing down references in there because Sam says, I told him to listen to Marvin Gaye, Trouble Man, which is from 1972, which would have been when they were both in deep freeze. Well, Bucky in and out. And I like, Bucky says, I like 40s music. I think it's funny. I wish Bucky would do more things that were 40s like instead of just talking about it. I think that would help really sell that. But again, they're, talking about Steve. And I like that Zemo's like, oh, it's a great song. It really shows the African-American experience. And I love that it was just great give and take. And Sam's like, he's out of line, but that's correct. And then, since they're talking about Steve, this was a great transition. So good job, Derek Kolstad. But Zemo says, Steve was just a man, and you guys are, building him up like he was some kind of god. But all men are flawed. Because, remember, Cap, through his zealousness to get Ultron, basically was responsible for killing, Zemo's family. So that also puts even Cap in a gray zone. And Cap was that was what Civil War was about. I thought, Cap saw things in black and white, but I agree that Cap was, bending rules that suited him when it suited him. So that to me is very interesting. That's a conversation we've never had. We've had it when we were talking about Civil War, and I was like, Steve's wrong, and a lot of you were like, no, he's not. But it just goes to show you what can happen when someone's very charismatic, right? And I thought that Zemo did a great job pointing out, and he said, about this, Bucky, when you were a young soldier sent to Germany to stop a mad icon, aka Hitler, someone who was put forward as a patriotic symbol, and that's horrifying. And then he says, we don't want to live in a world with people like the Red Skull, showing that, to every hero there's a villain, and, it just becomes a mess. And I think I thought it was really a very compelling argument. I enjoyed Zemo's TED Talk on this plane. So then we have this weird thing where I thought that the stuff with Carly was kind of off this episode. She went full villain this episode. But here she's at a GRC resettlement camp. I'm surprised no one in the camp is like, oh, we found her. She's hanging out here playing football. But so someone she loves dies, right? So I'm like, that's just her excuse you'll see, to hurt people. But she's very upset about it. So this woman passes away. And then we go to Madripoor, which I believe is Shanghai. I couldn't confirm for sure. I believe this is Shanghai. If anyone here can recognize that skyline, please let me know if I'm correct on that one. So they show up and they're all in disguise. And I love that Sam says, I'm the only one dressed like a pimp. And I loved, again, this is a great line where Zemo says, only an American would think that a fashion-forward black man looks like a pimp. And I love that Zemo, has fashion choices. I'm like, was there some GQ issues in your cell there on the floor there? And he's like, there were. And he's going undercover. Sam is smiling tiger, and there's a shot of him. And, it is a pretty close approximation. But I don't know. I think it's, I think if people really knew him, you would not be able to cover as him. So anyway, they get in a car on the bridge. I thought it was weird they walked here. I was like, why did they pick them up from the airport? I guess they were like, we want to use this bridge, damn it. The location scout's like, give me this one. And I'm like, okay. So they drive off. Again, Zemo likes his cars. And they have an escort, which kind of freaks Sam and Bucky out. And then they're in Madripoor. They shot from the trail that everyone was like, is that Madripoor? And it is. And so they go down here. It's very Blade Runner-y. Some of you also pointed out, which I agree. And there's the Princess Bar. That's where Wolverine goes as his alter ego all the time, a.k.a. Patch. So that is awesome. If they had gone in there, they might have found Logan early. He might have joined the MCU earlier. So that's fantastic. And then this is where we're going, the Screaming Monkey Bar. And also you can see Power Broker is watching. Power Broker was not really, I don't believe, a big Madripoor character in the comics, but in the MCU, he or she is. All right, so, and they're speaking of Power Broker. Why would Power Broker be at the bar like that? So that's one thing that makes me feel like, meh. But anyway, Sharon's like, I gotta get out of here, but not too far so I can save them momentarily. So they have this little gag about apparently Smiling Tiger likes to drink snake insides. A lot of animal theme going on here. And those, by the way, aren't skulls. They seem to be like, monkey skulls, because it's a screaming monkey. Oh, that makes sense. All right, so anyway, this bartender's like, drink it. And I thought Anthony Mackie did a pretty good job with this. And so then they're like, power broker doesn't want you here, Zemo. And Zemo's like, well, tell him if he has a problem, come see me. And they establish that he's never met the power broker. Zemo's never met the power broker, only knows him, he says by reputation. And the power broker is judge, jury, and executioner here in Madripoor. And it makes me feel that maybe it's Sharon. So here they set up this idea, they're undercover and Winter Soldier is supposed to be being controlled by Zemo. And so this is a little demonstration that he is his bodyguard. So he says, Winter Soldier, attack. And I love the way this was used. And someone's filming, as I said during the watch along, that stuff's going to find its way online and Bucky's therapist is going to be upset. But I like that Zemo leans into Sam and says, it didn't take very much for him to fall right back into it, did it? And I think they're doing a good job of not only setting up the similarities between Zemo and Bucky for us to recognize, but, for Sam. And I think it's to Zemo's benefit to sow the seeds of distrust between the two of them. And he's doing it quite well. So Bucky beats this guy up. And they're keeping their cover, and they get invited back. They get invited backstage. Ooh, backstage passes for everyone. And, again, Zemo's leading the way here. So it's very much Zemos World. And I want you to pay attention to Zemo leading the way here, because there's a pretty funny callback to this later in the episode. So Zemo, they're like, he's like, yeah, he struts in here. He's like, yeah, I'm Baron Zemo. And she knows him, and she's like, are you supposed to be in jail? And this was great. He does a shrug, a little bit like John Walker did last episode. And he's like, people like us always find a way out, don't we? Which I thought was hilarious, because it was not only a good way to get rid of the question, but also that's very true of supervillains. They always do manage to find their way out of prison. So I thought that was great. I love that they like none of that's why they're never upset when they're in prison, because they're like, oh, I'm gonna be out of here shortly. I can catch up on my reading and my fashion magazines. So he says what he's going to barter is the Winter Soldier. He said, I'll give you the control words and he'll do whatever you want. And then he puts his finger on his dimple. That was like, I'm like, boundaries, Zemo. I mean, I felt uncomfortable watching it. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. This show has a lot of fun shipping undercurrents to it after last week as well. So then Sam, God damn it, Sam, he left his phone on, and it's his sister. And Sylvie, I believe her name was, Sylvie's like, answer it on speaker. So he almost pulls it off. He's like, oh, because the bank thing all works out. And then his sister, totally ruins it, not only by calling him Sam, which Sylvie picks up on, but she says Cheerios. I think that would have been what I would have focused on. I'd be like, Cheerios. That would have been funnier. So but before she says kill them, but before they can do anything, someone shoots Sylvie. I think it might have been Sharon, to be honest with you. Because why would she be shooting people outside the bar but not inside the bar? If she's the shooter looking out for them, she's the shooter looking out for them. So, but then there's Selby, but then there's a bounty. Look, the power broker has everyone's phone number. It's like alerts. Sign up for Madripoor power broker alerts. You want to make some money? Oh, that's a little bit like Westworld and stuff like that. So everybody starts chasing after them. And Zemo uses this opportunity to get away, but then shortly comes back to join them. Zemo had a lot of opportunities to get away during this episode, but he never did, which I find very interesting. Makes you wonder, if Zemo wants to stay with you, you should be nervous. I'd be like, why are you constantly trying to escape? Uh-oh. So Sharon comes up and she's like, hey, what's up, guys? And she's like, I'm going to take Zemo down. But she didn't shoot on sight, and she has no authority to arrest anyone she's wanted, so I think it might have all been for show. So she's like, she gives him a big speech. She's like, nobody came to help me. I've been off the grid. I didn't blip. So I came to Madripoor and set up a criminal empire. And sure enough, she takes him to her apartment in Hightown, which has security guards. Now, do all buildings in Hightown have security guards? It is Madripoor, but I don't know. It seems like a supervillain lair to me, even with bright red lights on the front of it. So she sells stolen art. Well, they have the fakes are in the museums, and she's selling the real stuff in Madripoor. And this looks like this stuff would all be damaged. And Sam's like, okay, you're all more worldly than me. I get it. I thought that was cute. And then, speaking of cute, I was like, ooh la la. So Sam gives us a little bit of a show. He does a costume change. And so they're in the apartment here. And let's see here. And so Sharon is like, Madripoor doesn't have extradition. I liked when she said to Sam, the whole hero thing is a joke, which I guess you agree with me because I saw you gave up the shield. And I think that might also be a power broker foreshadowing. I think that's really interesting. Oh, speaking of foreshadowing, I forgot to include it. Earlier in the episode, Sam says, when he's talking about, we can't help Zemo, he's like, do you think that Wakanda forgot about what happened? They didn't. And of course, Wakanda showed up later in the episode. So that's great. A lot of good foreshadowing here as well. Derek Kolstad, great script. So she's like going around, and then she makes fun of Bucky, and she's like, you are Mr. Stars and Stripes sidekick. And I like that Bucky was like, wow, she's kind of awful now. And it's like, you have no idea. Maybe. I think we're not going to do a Mephisto here. She's not definitely the power broker, but I think it's an excellent theory. So Sam's like, come on, help us. And he's like, I can help you. And she's like, they're not going to do anything for me. And Sam's like, they gave Bucky the Winter Soldier a pardon. Why not you? She's like, So they make a deal. If she helps them, Sam will get her a pardon. And she's like, no one knows I'm the power broker. Maybe I could go back into normal society. Something the power broker would totally do. So here's the power broker's party. Now I'm having fun with this. But here's Sharon's party. And this was great. Now see, Sam and Bucky are like, we're not going to enjoy this because this is an evil party. But Zemo's like, I've been in prison. This is great. So at first he looks at this painting, which was so fun. And you're not supposed to touch this artwork. That's number one rule in museums. And here he is wanting to touch it. He's so evil. And then he dances. The whole episode is worth it just to see Zemo dancing by himself, by the way, at a club. That was fantastic. And he kind of was like, yeah, I'm by myself here, but that's cool. That's all right. He was so great. It was so relatable. I loved it. So they get a call, and the power broker is hiding out at this very affordable location of shipping containers across the bay. So she knows exactly the thing that he's in, and you're like, wait a minute, Sharon. So she knows the thing that he's in, and she gives, I love this pop collar on Zemo's jacket. So she gives everybody an earpiece, which is great. We're always wondering how everyone can talk during these things, so I think it's cute that they set it up here. And of course, only Zemo's like checks for a trap door. You're like, Sharon sent us in here, and she had pretty good intel. I mean, we should look harder than just being like, oh, it's empty, let's go home. So of course there's a fake back, and it reveals the staircase, and here Zemo steps out of the way to let them go first. Zemo, you're so evil, I love it. So they go up here and they find Dr. Wilfred Nagel, who is from the comics, but in the comics, he's the one who was actually around earlier and experimented on Isaiah Bradley, who we met, of course, last episode. So different time frame, but the character is from the comics and with these people, these characters. So they find him. They find him in here, and he's very Jesse Eisenberg, Lex Luthor. It's like, whoa, what? Like this performance I did not care for. I just thought it was too all over the place. It was too mustache twirly, too cartoonish. I just didn't like it. So I like that Sam's like, you know who the Winter Soldier is, you know who Zemo is, and I'm like, you need a better publicist, Falcon. Why don't you like, and you know who I am too? I guess he wouldn't be afraid of Falcon, but he knows that Winter Soldier and Zemo could really do some damage. As they do. Zemo does shoot him point blank. So outside, Sharon takes care of all these different, assassins, because there's a bounty on, they just seem like regular Madripoor people. I thought they could have done a little better with the assassins. I thought they cheaped out a little bit on the assassins. I'd be like, come on, they're assassins. They should all look really cool. Like usually in comic books, when there's a bounty on your head, you get a little bit of like a show, and you get all these guest stars. Everyone shows up, and it's really cool. It's like a reunion of cool characters. And here I guess it's supposed to be that, Sharon could take all these people on by herself. But I thought that the fight choreography and Emily Van Camp's execution of it was a little weak. It wasn't as sharp as it should have been, and I didn't think they were particularly good action sequences. So the back inside, Bucky has a gun on him, and he does shoot past his head to get him to talk. But Zemo also finds a gun that Dr. Nagel had hidden within the lab, which makes sense that he would have a gun hidden in there. And also, maybe there was super soldier serum in here. They ask, of course, the million-dollar question, is there any serum in this lab? And he says no, and he probably was lying. But, I don't know why they took his word for it. I'd be like, there's tons of vials in here. What are you making? But it blew up, so it's probably all gone anyway. But Zemo, and I wonder if it was when this guy Nagel called himself a god. I wonder if that's what made Zemo flip out and say, you got to go. But But anyway, before he gets shot, he tells his story, and he says, first I worked with Hydra on the Winter Soldier program, then the CIA recruited me because there's no good guys and bad guys. Basically, everybody's working for themselves. And I got the Isaiah Bradley samples, and I worked on those, and I was almost ready to put my serum into effect, which wasn't gonna, he said it was subtle. It wasn't gonna have jacked up people like, how Cap came out of that machine. But at the same time, I also think it's cheaper for Marvel. Like, we don't have to pay for anybody to go to bodybuilding. So I thought that was funny. And also it makes it easier for, I guess, these people to hide. You never know. That makes no sense. I mean, they should have bigger muscles, but whatever. Again, it's a comic book. So anyway, this means going forward, anyone could be a super soldier no matter what they look like. And then he says I like that he blipped. He's like, I was gonna do it, and then I turned to dust. But when he came back, nerds, he was one of the people who came back. The power broker was like, I'll help you in Madripoor. I'll help you execute your serum. And he created 20 vials, which Carly stole. And we know she gave them to 8 people. So that's what happened. But he's not going to make any more. The soldier serum, like with Erskine, that's interesting, dies with him. They both got shot. Oh, it's dangerous business making super soldier serum. So someone blows up the lab and it destroys Nagel's work. And they get out, but they get cornered because, again, they're not working together very well. So we get some classic buddy cop bickering. And then Zemo shows up and he puts his mask on. And I love this shot with him from behind from the trailer. That was so cool. And he comes in big. He blows up this gas pipe. He shoots it and it explodes. He knows how to make an entrance. Supervillains, you got to give them that. And then luckily, I think this mask largely exists so that a stunt person can come in here and easily substitute for Daniel Bruhl, because in a few moments he takes it right back off. He's like, I only wear it for like fight sequences, so not only can I have a stunt person fill in for me, but there's fire here. I'm worried about my face. I'm like, your eyes are exposed. And he's like, leave me alone. So he takes these people out, and they're running off. So Baron Zemo could have escaped, but he came back to the group. So I like Bucky here. In just one shot, he uses his super arm to throw the steel pipe into that assassin. I thought that was great. That was great. So Zemo, see, there he is. He takes it off. He's like, I don't want to wear this anymore. I'm Daniel Bruhl. I want everyone to see my face. I want everyone to see the moneymaker. And of course he found a classic car. That's Zemo's thing. Zemo has nice cars. Zemo has nice things. So I like the look on his face. That Daniel Bruhl is so great. So he's like, let's go, guys. All right, and they go, but Sharon's like, get me my pardon. I'm not coming with you. We'll get to her in a moment. And they have a good gag where now Sam is in the back, and he's like, you're not going to move your seat up, are you? Because he didn't do it for Bucky back in Civil War. So that was great. I'm like, sit in the middle, Sam. You're not like you're wearing your seatbelt anyway. You guys, none of you have seatbelts on. Are there even seatbelts in that car? No wonder Zemo likes it. I should all be worried. But Sharon runs off, and she gets into this car. I mean, did this lady drive them out there? And she gets in the back seat because she's the boss. And she's like, we have a number of problems. So I think that was, maybe she is the power broker. Or maybe she's just quite wealthy because, she has that great side business that she came up with. So anyway, we go to this GRC supply depot in Lithuania. And here we have a little backstory, a little misdirect to make you feel sorry for Carly before you find out that she is a monster. Or society has twisted her. Or again, maybe this is the gray area, right? She's a nice person, but she's doing bad things. So we find out that they both went to Madripoor, and that this guy says, I used to work for the army for a little bit, the military, but then I found out the mob security in Madripoor paid better. And that must be how they met, because Carly says that after the blip was over and everyone came back, she realized that Madripoor was the only way she could find something that would allow her to have to one-up everyone going forward. And find something she did, 12 vials of super soldier serum. And so she says, I would have liked to have been a teacher. And I like that they upgraded her professor. Think big, guys. Carly's always thinking big. So that was nice. And then they're like, the power broker's still coming for us. And she's like, are you kidding me? I don't know how she found out that Madripoor, they destroyed the other vials. But she's like, we're the only one. She still has some vials because she says, we're the only ones who have any super soldier serum left in the world. The power broker's going to come begging because he's going to want that back. Or is she going to want that back? So anyway, we go back to the prison where Zemo escaped from, and of course John Walker and Hoskins know that it was Bucky and Sam. So because you can see, look at that side eye that Hoskins is giving Walker. He's like, "Who are you, man? I don't even recognize this guy." So he's like, "So what? We're gonna work off the grid, and we're gonna he's like, "Let's follow Sam and Bucky." And I thought it was interesting that Walker says, hey, if we get the job done, you really think they're going to sweat us on the how? And I was like, man, that's a good point. I mean, that's kind of like the way the world works and why there are some problems with it. But interesting theory. So they go back onto Zemo's private plane, and I like that Bucky was cleaning off his metal hand. And Sam calls Torres, and he's like, I heard that, look for this woman that means something to Carly. And Torres is like, I'm on it. So they have a little conversation, and Sam's like, this hunk of metal, that's what he calls the shield. He's like, this hunk of metal, how many people have to have their lives ruined or be killed? And he's like, maybe I shouldn't have given it to the museum. Maybe I should have destroyed it. And Bucky's like, whoa, I want it. And I thought that was interesting. I think maybe Bucky still feels bad he wasn't picked maybe to be Captain America. It's just, we'll see what happens with that shield. There's going to be a struggle. What will happen to it by the end of we see them playing around with it. So I guess they're going to figure out it's okay, in the trailers. But I thought that was interesting. And then, so they get a call back from Torres. And I think it's funny that Zemo, like, where's the butler? I guess he's flying the plane. So Zemo serves some food, and I would not eat anything that Zemo served me. Although I would like to know what he made them. I wish we had a good shot of what he made. I bet the presentation is excellent. And so we find out that woman died, but she's in Latvia. And so and Zemo's like, I know somebody there. And so they reroute to go there, or near Latvia. So we go to that. Now we're at that GRC place, and they raid it. The Flag Smashers raid it, and they get a bunch of supplies. And this guy's like, you guys are scum. And we think that he's scum, but we're about to find out that they're all scum. So she's like, you had 6 months of supplies. So I'm like, I don't know if they deserve to die for that, but she decides that they do. So she tells this guy, put your seatbelt on, and the car explodes. As soon as she said she wasn't going to take it, I was like, there's a bomb in that car. I don't know why he was so naive too. I guess he didn't believe he was part of that kind of an organization. But he got an education. I guess she is a teacher after all. So she blows up this building, and he's like, there were people in there. And she's like, this is the only thing they understand. And he's like, okay, whatever you say. I don't want to get blown up. The next day, everybody resigns from the Flag Smashers. Although maybe some other people feel this stuff is okay. Now, I think they actually shot this in the Czechoslovakia. It looks charming. So they're walking along, and this is where we find out that Sokovia is erased from the map. I thought that was interesting, that all the neighboring countries swooped in and carved it up and divided it up, and Sokovia no longer exists. The MCU is like, did we do that? Ha ha ha. And then he says, there's a memorial. Did any of you ever bother to visit, considering the fact that you destroyed Sokovia, the Avengers did? And of course, we know that later on, Zemo will visit that memorial because we've seen it in the trailer. And then they're going to this, wherever they're going, and Bucky notices something on the ground. So he says, I'm going to go for a walk. And I can't believe that Sam's like, okay. I'd be like, you can't leave me alone with Zemo. That's how much they're beginning to trust Zemo. They're like, fine, this third guy in our group's cool. Don't worry about it. So Bucky picks that up off the ground, and it's a Wakanda bead that apparently is doing, it's like surveillance. I'm surprised no one else would pick that up or something, or think it was garbage. It's just like a metal thing in the ground. But, those beads are incredible because there's one across the way working as a camera, which Bucky easily spots. And he goes back to an alley, and he's like, you dropped this. And they did a great pan where you knew as soon as they went back. Even Bucky knew. He was like, I was wondering when you guys were going to show up. And there she is. It's Florence Kasumba playing Ayo. That's her character's name for the Dora Milaje. And she looks fantastic. Very nicely dressed. And she says, I'm here for Zemo. Because he did kill their king. I guess if the German authorities are no longer going to punish him, Wakanda is on it. I wonder what a Wakandan prison looks like. I bet it looks pretty sweet. And so she looks so great there. She looks really cool. And I'm glad that Wakanda is in here. We're talking about countries. We're talking about nations. This is a globe-trotting adventure. How can you not include Wakanda? So I can't wait to see her in action. I'm sure she's going to get an action sequence next week. It's going to be fantastic. So what did you think of this episode? What do you think of Zemo? Zemo is like the Captain America Loki, and I think that's a great idea. So what do you think? Share your own theories down below. Thanks for going over this with me. Subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.